Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special YouTube. This will not be like any YouTube I've done. I think I've done about 100 of them. I do have a drink in my hand, Christopher. It's water, though I did think about having funnier props, but I'm too pissed off to have props right now. So let's get into this. I have some notes, which I don't ever usually have for a YouTube, but I thought it was important that I make sure I get all my thoughts out. So let's just start off this by saying I still own a substantial position in OCUL, but I did sell down a great deal of it yesterday. Okay. As of yesterday, I think I told everybody on Sunday, a 40% delta adjusted position. This is just in my account. I also manage money for my family, and that I don't count when I do position sizes, delta adjusted position sizes, whatever. I peaked at 50% delta adjusted last week. I mentioned I sold that down last week. And now I'm down to a 20% delta adjusted position. That is all options. I have no common anymore in my account. I still have some common in the family account and some options in the family account. I have no idea what I do with that position in the coming days and weeks. A lot of that is June options that have to be exercised on Friday, and I do plan on exercising all of those. A lot of it will depend on where the stock is, and a lot of it will depend on what happens in the next few days. I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around what happened yesterday. And a lot happened yesterday, and I'm not just referring to the conference call. Before I get into it all, I'd like to give you some background about what got us here and what got me to Ocular. So I did a YouTube on Ocular in December, which you can all find on here. I actually watched part of it this weekend. Sometimes I watch my old YouTubes to get perspective on whether I had thesis drift or what's changed and whatnot. And the stock was $290 when I pitched it on here. It's $650 now. So Ocular has been a massive success any way you look at it. And my original thesis in Ocular was that I owned Ocular off and on for years, very small position. And my thesis was that the CEO had done 2 fireside chats in December, and they both said that they're planning for a future with no capital raises. And they had a lot of options ahead of them. Both times he mentioned that Dextenza could be worth $250 to $750 million based on comparable sales. The market cap was like 220 million. And I was impressed with his ability to have confidence as a going concern with no dilution going forward. And given where the market cap was, I didn't think they could even do any kind of capital raises, nor did, I'm sure did he. Right? What were they going to raise? $30 million? That would fund them for, a quarter and a half. So I emailed the CEO and I let him know how impressed I was with his firesides. And he replied back and he said, "Thanks. I'm really glad, you listened. And I do these fireside chats, to be transparent and honest with investors." So over the course of the next few weeks in January and February, I sent him a few emails, reiterating how important it is that he keeps talking about the non-dilution and keeping that message. And, he basically told me, I'm going to keep saying it. And, eventually people will believe it. And, also basically told me that he's an honorable person and, there's no reason to believe that he would not do what he says he's going to do. Okay. We spoke on the phone in March and we spoke on the phone in May, and we probably had 15-minute phone calls each time. Okay. If you fast forward to today, and I also sent him emails over the course of over the fall. I didn't really get any replies from him, over the course of the spring. It was basically me giving advice. And most of my advice was always make sure you keep telling people that you're going to do, what you say you're going to do, which is over the last 3 or 4 months publicly, on many occasions, he has made it clear that there are 2 paths that they could take. I'm not talking about the 3 different trials, but there's 2 paths they can take. They can partner, or they could do plan B. And he has said on more than one occasion that plan B, to go it alone, would be minimally or non-dilutive, and it will be fully funded till NDA. He said this as recently as May 15th or May 16th at the JMP Fireside, which you can hear for yourself if you want to go. It's on their website. Of course, along the same time, he's been telling us how amazing the data rooms are and super active and, all that good stuff. I sent him an email on Sunday morning. I couldn't sleep Saturday night after their data. And actually, let me back up a second. After they put out the Q1 earnings, in the press release, they omitted anything about strategic partnerships. They took out the lines about funding, possibly through a strategic partnership. And that was a huge red flag for me. Why would you delete that? I emailed him. I said, you need to address this on the call. Why isn't it in there? He didn't reply back. Oh, he did reply back. I think he told me that there was just too many words in the press release. So they took it out because they couldn't say everything, which is honestly one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. It's 2 lines, 2 words, and it's probably the most important 2 words in the whole press release. But anyway, he made up for it on the call, and that was the famous call where he talked about how the data room is extremely active, and they hope to have a conclusion in the near future. And then actually, when he talked about with the data room being extremely active, he said the very near future. That was 5 weeks ago. Near future, then very near future. So I emailed him on Sunday morning, and I told him that the most important thing he does on the call on Monday was reiterate that whatever option they take will be minimally or non-dilutive and funded till NDA. Now, mind you, as I've said on here many times, I do not know how that works. He has not told us how that works. The last thing he ever said about it was Dextenza was worth 250 to 750 million. But since then, he hasn't really given any details about how you do a raise of $250 million to get to an NDA in either wet AMD superiority or diabetic retinopathy. My definition of minimally dilutive is 15% or less shares outstanding. If they did that today, that would be raising 10 million shares at $6 or $5.50 a share. That does not get you there. Okay? But look, he doesn't want to tell us how we could do it. That's fine. I just don't think it's possible. But let that be said, okay? So I put this in the email. I also said you need to address how long strategics have had access for the 12-month data. So that's very important that you put that in. You talk about that the next day. So he gets on the conference call and he does none of this. He doesn't start off with this information and he doesn't address it. They get to Q&A and there's nothing. There's nothing about minimally or non-dilutive funded through NDA. Okay. And I freak out. I don't know why he wouldn't put that in there. There were multiple things in that conference call that gave me a big pause. For instance, the company has had the 12-month data for 5 months. I don't care what they want to tell you. Math is math. Okay. They reported the 7-month data in the 3rd week of September. They reported it. They presented it the 4th week of September at a conference. Okay. You add 5 months from 7 months from the end of September, and you get to the end of February. That means they could have presented the data at the end of February. Presented it. Okay. This is not some trial with 400 people in it. Okay. The trial has 24 people at just a small number of facilities. And again, if they were able to collect the data at 7 months as easily as they did, then they can collect the data at 12 months, as they did. When you see that the data cutoff was mid-April, to me, that's a little disingenuous because we know that 12 months hit sometime around January, right? I mean, because again, they'd be able to present the data at the end of February. So the quote unquote data cutoff could have been January, but they did April 5th. They said it was mid-April. And, they probably did that to include safety data up and through mid-April, which is fine. But they gave the strategics the data 1 week ago. Okay. And if you had it for 5 months, 4 or 5 months, and you're on a conference call at the beginning of May, using words like near term and very near term, but you haven't given your strategic partners access to the 12-month data yet, how could you possibly think you're near term or very near term? Especially when he last week at Jefferies and yesterday morning talked about how incredibly important the 12-month data is for strategics. It makes no sense to me. Something doesn't jive. And if you want to say that he couldn't give them the data because he was embargoed, because they were going to present it in June, I have 2 things to say about that. One, I call complete BS on that. They could be under NDA and they could have had access to the data whenever the company wants to give them access to the data. And 2, the company did not have to present in June the 12-month data. They could have presented it months earlier. They didn't have to present it at a science conference. They could have just press released it. If the idea was just that they were embargoed with it and they couldn't get it out, I mean, we are in a funding crunch here. The company has $60 million as of June 30th. Anthony likes to tout the 80 million they have as a part of the reason why they can go it alone. But they're down to 60 million June 30th, and they're burning 20 million a quarter. Okay. So I emailed him yesterday morning saying, I'd like a phone call. Can you please give me a call at your convenience? Now, just some background. I was a big shareholder in this company. I would probably say that outside of the Sacklers, I probably could have been the largest individual shareholder, me and my family, in the company. I'm hard pressed to find out that anyone owned more shares that wasn't an institution. So, but that's not a reason why he has to talk to me. He should want to talk to me because I'm helpful, I'm respectful, and we're on the same team. So, if he has the same agenda that I have, which is to promote the company and promote the opportunity, which I think I've done a better job doing than he has, then he shouldn't want to speak to me. I get an email from him where he CC'd 4 other Ocular employees on it, the CFO, the general counsel, the vice president of technical affairs, God knows why she's on it, and then outside IR. And the email says that, I'll just read it to you. It says, perhaps I misunderstood or it was never disclosed that you actively broadcast. I hope you understand that interactions with journalists, broadcasters need to follow a protocol within the company. We'd be happy to engage, but I will ask that you make all future approaches through our IR PR agency. Thanks and regards, Anthony. Okay, well, this completely blew me up, right? I'm now sitting on this huge position and I am, worried that there's going to be a massive secondary that comes and the CEO has stopped taking my calls and won't even confirm the most basic of questions, which is all I want him to do is reaffirm what he said for 6 straight months over and over and over on public calls. Okay. Now, the fact that he's calling me a broadcaster or a journalist is so unbelievably offensive. I make no money on these YouTube channels. I make no money on Twitter. I'm one of his largest investors. I am no different than any investor going to an investor conference and presenting the idea. I'm no different than an investor going on TV and pitching a stock idea. I'm no different than an investor writing up Ocular on Value Investors Club or Seeking Alpha and pitching the stock. Okay. I'm doing it via video. Now, Let's say Anthony was upset because he thought I was giving away information he gave me privately, and he's upset that I'm now disseminating publicly. Well, two things about that. One, I didn't do that. Okay, if you go through all of my calls, all of my YouTubes, I only talked about what was said publicly. I said anything he said privately just rhymed with that. Okay, but two is way more important. Two, who gives a shit if I did that? Regulation FD says that anything a CEO tells you, publicly or privately, can be disseminated to any other person, unless I signed an NDA and I was given a blackout where I couldn't trade the stock. Okay, no CEO should be doing one-on-ones, should be doing private phone calls with investors, no matter how big or small you are, if you don't expect that that information is going to get out to the public. It is absolutely my right and my obligation to share information I get from phone calls with public company officials. But I didn't do it, okay? I didn't do that, okay? I didn't share his emails, and I did not share his calls. But I could have, and I would have been ethically and morally right, okay? But the fact that he's telling me to go through an IR agency, a PR agency, because of this, blatantly offensive, okay? Let me tell you something, okay? These biotech CEOs, they think that they're doing God's, they're God's gifts to earth. And over the last 5 years, I've seen this happen company after company after company. Okay. Anthony's given new option grants every year, no matter where the stock goes. So if the stock gets super diluted, he'll just get a new option grant. Okay. Will you and I get option grants? Will you and I be able to participate in a really bad offering? Are they going to call you when they want to price the stock at $4 to sell 200 million shares to fund, the trials? That's not the right math. It would be more like 100 million shares or 75 million shares. But my point is, it's you and I that get fucked here. Okay. It's not the company executives that make, millions of dollars a year and get new option grants. You want to know something interesting about how these companies work? They get rewarded for when their stock price goes down, right? Go look at the option grant that Anthony got in February or March of this year. I had this happen with a company that I got involved with years ago that I had to go active against. Every year that company stock went lower, the CEO got more options granted to him. It was Synomics. So when the stock was 4, let's say he got like 400,000 shares. When the stock was 3, he got 600,000 shares. When the stock was 2, he got 800,000 shares. The reason why this happens is they're told they're going to give X millions of dollars worth of value, and they use Black-Scholes. And the lower the stock price is, the more shares you get, which means you get a higher percentage of the company rewarded to you for the stock plummeting. Okay. It's perverse. It happens all over small cap land. Okay. So Anthony will be okay no matter what happens with these two outcomes. He'll have another first of all, he's already been granted millions of shares and put up very little money for the stock he owns. Okay. I own more stock. I put up more money than the entire board of directors and the entire executive team combined. I'll repeat that. The entire board and the entire executive team, I own more shares than, or I did own more shares than, that I paid for. So treating an investor with respect, especially when they have a better pulse on the company and the stock market than you do, right? The stock opened up yesterday and then plummeted. And it didn't plummet because people were sinking in 12-month data. No, it's plummeting because this is the huge risk you take when you have a biotech that only has 3 quarters of cash and the market is wishy-washy about whether or not you're going to be able to get there without diluting the living hell out of us. And the only way you stop the death panic is you tell people and you keep reiterating it. Now, why didn't he reiterate it? It's possible it was just an oversight, and I hope it was. But if it wasn't an oversight, then what? Where are we? There's 3 options that they had to take here, right? I'm not going to do the 3 boobed women from Total Recall today because I'm just not in the mood. But the first option, doing an inferiority trial in wet AMD, costs at least $300 million. And we all know if they go that route, they have to partner. There's no giant offering or, hocus pocus that you can get that kind of money plus funding the company. Okay. The second option, a superiority trial, in wet AMD is really confusing right now. And, I give Anthony a lot of credit for being transparent there, but his transparency has just confused us more. Can they only do an international trial there? Can they do a domestic trial there? If they do an international trial, I'm told by some people that that's kind of dead in the water. It's an uninvestable company. If they don't enroll domestic patients, it'll never get approved with just international patients. Can they ethically do a domestic trial with 10 or 15 letter loss before they rescue? It's clear. It's absolutely not clear in that conference call. And if it's not clear to Anthony and the company today, when will it be clear? I mean, we're sitting here near the end of June. The next quarter will probably have a going concern language in their queue. Now they have an ATM outstanding. They could be hitting the ATM right now just to have money to fund the company for another quarter. So the idea would be they sell $20 million worth of stock so that they refresh back to 80 million and they don't have going concern language come in June 30th. I think going concern language is at the end of the day, but that's the kind of thing that you try to stay away from when you run a company. So I don't know, and the third option is they do a diabetic retinopathy trial. Anthony and the company have been trying to push this. They could do it as quickly as Q1 2024. I just think that's nonsense. They're going to have interim data Q1 of 2024. By the way, this phase 1 trial they're doing in diabetic retinopathy, they're doing it against a sham control. Since they decided to launch that trial, FDA has given guidance to them that says they have to do it against an active control. So you have to do an anti-VEGF shot in the control group, and you have to do, the TKI in the drug arm. So when they get this readout 6 months from now, if it even shows a material, an efficacy, a material efficacy endpoint in 6 months, that won't even be a good comparison to what a large phase 3 trial would look like, because you're not doing it against active drug, you're doing it against sham. It's my belief you'll have to wait at least 12 months to see clear and concise evidence, since diabetic retinopathy is a slower moving disease. I've also been told by somebody that I respect a lot that that's a very risky path. Not only will they not be able to launch that trial until probably late 2024, but if it takes 2 years if it takes a full year to enroll and then a year to read out, because you have to probably have a 12-month endpoint there, you're talking about the end of 2026 when it reads out and the end of 2027 when you get approval. That is a lot of money being burned. A lot of money being burned. And there's no current market for maintenance diabetic retinopathy. You'd be creating your own market. And it remains to be seen whether or not those patients are amenable to a shot every 9 to 12 months, since their disease is not as severe as wet AMD. So those are their 3 options. Okay. And all of them have a shitload of hair right now, right? Diabetic retinopathy, you're not even going to launch it for 1.5 years. And that's pending the phase 1 trial working. The superiority trial, we have no idea whether or not they can launch that or not in the United States, if it's ethical. And if they do it internationally alone, we have no idea whether that drug could be approved in America as a result. And then you have an inferiority wet AMD trial that would require a partner that costs at least $300 million. And then there's also some questions about whether or not that trial wouldn't be designed appropriately to show clear and concise evidence that it's superior to the standard of care and actually can create billions in sales once it gets approved. Just how it sounds, non-inferiority, that's all it's supposed to prove. You'd have to really show some way that, to insurance mostly, that this is superior to what will then be generic anti-VEGF shots, not just non-inferior. It has to be superior, or else insurance won't cover it. So, I don't know what's going on. Why did they omit the minimal or non-dilutive and financial NDA at both the Jefferies on Thursday and the Money conference call and the Brad Lonecar interview? They said it most recently on May 15th. Are they planning on now possibly doing a huge dilutive deal? I have no idea. He wouldn't respond to my email. Now, they didn't do a deal yesterday. There's no secondary that was announced last night. And I have no reason to believe they're going to do a secondary tomorrow. But is it now be in the works if they can't get a partnership done? What does a partnership look like these days? He likes to promote this data room. As recently at Brad Loncar's interview, he said, there's lots of people you would know in the data room, and there's some people you wouldn't. Again, just talking about all these people interested in this drug, it would be very hard pressed to me how you can get this much activity in what you say every KOL says has proof of concept and can go right to phase 3. Nobody disagrees with this. These are actual words he's used in interviews. Nobody disagrees with this. And then you can't get a term sheet, that can get us to that phase 3. The part that I have a problem with is not if they don't sign a partnership. Nobody can guarantee a partnership, but once you start talking about partners over and over and over again, you kind of paint yourself into a corner if you don't do it, especially when you're running out of cash and you need lots of money. The part I have a problem with, to be very clear, is Anthony and Anthony alone talked about the plan B. The plan B of being non or minimally dilutive and funded till NDA. That is what got me excited about Ocular. The data was good. The data was even better after 10 months. They had other things that were interesting with TIC readout. And also, I thought Dextenda would start growing again. I think it is going to start growing again. They might get the code change in November, which would be huge. The company has a lot going for it. But at the end of the day, I have to be able to trust management. And everything I was told about Anthony is that he's a good guy. And I have no reason to believe that he's not. Okay. What I said in my last conference, on my last YouTube, was that if he doesn't come through with one of those two plans, then he's a liar. Because you can't go out to market and repeatedly talk about a plan B. You can't guarantee a plan A because you don't know what partners are going to do. But to then not have the plan B in your pocket, if you're going to say it over and over and over again, is disingenuous. It's bluffing. And it's just not right. Now, he hasn't done that yet. Okay? He hasn't done that yet. So let's see what happens. And my advice to you as shareholders is I would email them. You can guess their email address very easily. They're at the bottom of every press release, the CFO's email address. You can see how the email address is made up. You could figure out Anthony's email address. Be respectful. Ask him all the questions I've just asked you. Ask him if anything's changed regarding plan B. Ask him how the strategics haven't had the 12-month data till last week, if they've had it for 5 months. Is there any sense of urgency here? He keeps talking about Q2's ending and Q3, they can start the trial. Well, I just don't understand how that could be true if they waited all this time to give the strategics this data. And I'm pissed. I'm pissed. I think there's a lot of questions still to be answered here. And I'm not super confident that the answers are easy. So I haven't actually read any questions yet to make sure I've done everything here. And finally, I don't want to be difficult, but Anthony's track record the last 5 years is not great. Okay. He's been in the company for 5 years. You can go pull up what the stock price has done. There's been numerous failed trials. There's been one small partnership in 5 years with Affimed in Asia. They brought in $10 million in upfront. So for me just to go on blind trust and a track record is hard. 5 years is a long time. There's been a lot of capital raises, and you see what the stock's done over 5 years. So it's not like I have a lot to lean on here. So yeah. But for him to not reply to my email, not call me because he called me a broadcaster or media is just highly, highly offensive. Highly offensive. All right. I'm off my soapbox. Let me take some questions. Cowan's saying that 12-month data was received less than a week ago. What Cowan was saying was what he said on the call. On the call, he said that he dropped the 12-month data in the data room a week ago. If you guys and the company would like to dispute my math, I would love to hear it. They reported 7-month data the last week of September. That means they had to gather it, analyze it, put it in a spreadsheet, make a deck out of it, and bring it to a conference. That takes many weeks. Usually it takes 4 to 8 weeks to do that. Okay? They reported it at the end of September. October, November, December, January, February. 5 plus 7 is 12. That means they could have presented it at the end of February. March, April, May. 3 full months from when they could have presented it. And I believe they've had it for at least 4 to 8 weeks before that. Already trial site data collection reporting. It takes time. It's never that easy. That's great. Did you not think it might have taken time for them to collect and report the 7-month data? Again, I'm using pure logic and math. They reported and presented the 7-month data the last week of September. However long it took to analyze all that data, which was probably a more important report than this one, because that was the one they were bringing out to the world for the first time, it takes the same amount of time for them to do it for the 12-month data. So the near or very near term was possibly just a pump to get a price that would have been minimally dilutive. I have no idea what the near or very near term was. You'd have to ask the company. All I do is hang on words. I listen to every conference call and every fireside chat a half a dozen times. I've memorized what he said in every one of them. And he's been very consistent. Very consistent. And the only difference between today and December is the stock's gone from 3 to 630. And the reason why it's gone from 3 to 630 is because of his words and the 10-month data. So he said it as recently as May 15th, minimally or non-dilutive. But you'd have to ask him. He's not talking to me. I think you have to put yourself in his shoes. If you saw your videos for the first time, I probably didn't expect you to talk about your connection online. I also understand your position. No, I just disagree. People go on TV all the time talking about companies. They speak to CEOs. This is very, very normal. People write up ideas on Value Investors Club and on Seeking Alpha after speaking to companies, speaking to CEOs. Let's be grown-ups about this. Anything that is said to anybody in a private meeting about a public company is subject to Reg FD. And I did not even disclose anything that he said to me on those calls. He did not give me any material, non-public information, any of those calls, as he couldn't. Most of my YouTubes have been about what he said publicly, virtually all. That's it. I'm using his words to try to understand what's going on. But it is great someone is putting pressure on this company and showing it to us little investors. Well, I'll tell you why, because we're the ones that will be fucked. I don't invest in companies that are this small usually, because when you get fucked, it's either through a giant secondary or a pipe. And if you don't know what a pipe is, it's when they sell stock and they have a warrant coverage involved to it. And you're not offered it. Okay? And a company that has funding needs like this is very, very dangerous for people like you and me. Okay? Because we're not called to give those funding needs. It's big investors, and they don't care about the dilution because they're taking the economics from you. That's how it works. When they buy the stock at $4 in a secondary, they buy more than their percentage of the company they already own. And then they get to take your economics from you. And to me, that's non-investable. I won't invest in that. And that's why, as I got to know Anthony, I trusted him that that was not a path that was going to be taken. And he gave me his word. So things change. But in the context of things changing, that's plan A, partnerships. The plan B should have internally been something that was known. He once used the phrase, he has line of sight on non-dilutive financing. I think that was in a December fireside chat. Words matter. And again, nothing has happened yet. They have not raised the money yet. They have not partnered yet. I am merely telling you with full transparency what has transpired in the last 24 hours and why I'm so angry. And it's not because I feel slighted. If he did the things that I wanted him to do, that all investors should demand that he did, I would not have sold my stock. It's that troubles me. Okay. I'm a big boy. He doesn't want to talk to a guy that does YouTube videos, even though, like I said, I'm the best and biggest, I was the best and biggest proponent of the company and doing a job better than his IR does or that he does at conferences, speaking to people that, are not the ones that need to be spoken to. Then he doesn't have to talk to me. I think it's ridiculous. I think Reg FD, there shouldn't be one-on-ones. I was also very perturbed that he was going to all these fireside chats. He did a fireside chat after earnings, like May 6th. And I emailed him. I was like, dude, why are you going to fireside chats right now and doing one-on-ones? Shouldn't you be really close to a deal? Like, why are you sitting down and chatting with funds left and right if you're about to sign a partnership? And then he did it again May 15th. So, the skeptic in me is he's doing all these fireside chats because he's trying to raise enthusiasm for a large secondary. Because you don't have to care where the stock price is if you're going to partner. You want it to be higher because you're probably going to sell the pharmaceutical company some of your stock to in a deal. But you definitely don't have to go out and trumpet up enthusiasm because you should have that plan A working. Remember, extremely active data room, endless sleepless nights. We're getting interest from people you know and people you don't know. Okay, well, let's do this, right? I mean, there's no better time than today. And it remains to be seen which of those three options is the one you're going to go down because they all have their challenges. I love this. Thank you for sharing. Thanks, Barrett. It's a bit puzzling why a BP or otherwise hasn't already put together a deal. Pretty small deal, really. Board of directors and other institutions being greedy. I don't have an answer for that. I have no problem with patience. Let me be clear. Okay. I have no problem with patience. Yes, I owned a lot of June calls. Would have been great if it was done by the time June OpEx. Okay. But he has to do what's best for the company, not in the near term, but in the long term. And if that's this taking longer, this process, then it could take longer. And you don't hear me complaining about that. What I'm upset about is you need to keep it all together. You need to keep with your plan B, what it was historically and what it is going forward. Maybe even try to explain it better. Because so far, all I got is you might be able to partner Dextenza. That's what he said last time on May 15th. Partner Dextenza internationally. Dextenza is starting to make them a lot of money, which is ridiculous. They might make a couple $1 million a quarter. It's not enough to fund $250 million worth of cash burn and trials. He brought up the $80 million in cash they have, which is only going to be $60 million in cash. We all can do the math. We all know what the options are. Someone brought up a Baker Brothers-like deal where they do a royalty deal. He's never brought that up as a possibility. If it is, that'd be great. Tell the street. Maybe we'll do a royalty deal, as a possibility. But, if you're going to be transparent, then be fully transparent and let people like me pick holes in it. Because if you don't think the pharmaceutical companies are picking holes in this, they could do the same math that I'm doing to know whether there's a plan B or there's not a plan B or not. The best plan B would be there's more than one pharmaceutical company interested in this. Well, Anthony's saying that my grandma's in the dating room, is in the data room, and she's interested. So if as recently as the loan car interview, there's people we know and people we wouldn't know, then there should be no problem signing a deal here. If the data is as good as he says it is, and they say it is, and nobody disagrees with this, then it really should just be a question of how much money you're going to get up front. Is it 50 million? Is it 100 million? Is it 300 million? And you shouldn't dilute us. And you should move forward with a partner and keep developing TIC. Let DEX tend to surge in November with the code change, and you'll have significant economics in TKI with the partner. If you get multiple billion in milestone payments and double-digit royalties on something that could be a $5 to $10 billion drug, you did well for shareholders, right? Problem with the loan car interview, though, the broadcast thing is clearly a pretext. It's because you're calling him out and his inconsistency on non-dilutive. I mean, yeah. It's either that or, he doesn't like the movie Total Recall and me making jokes. I like doing this, okay? I do this. There's nobody that does something like this on Twitter or on the internet, okay? I don't get paid for this. I'm a substantial real investor. I disclose all my positions. I don't sell into pumps, and I don't buy into, into trashing it. Often I'm on here pitching a stock while I'm still buying it. Often. Okay. So it does me a disservice. So it's highly offensive to me. He doesn't know me. Okay. He doesn't know me, but it's highly offensive to me that he would not only not welcome these YouTubes, but thank me for them. And he should go out of his way to want to speak to me to get disclosure out there. And if he wanted to correct what was said yesterday, he had ample time to do it. And guess what, Anthony? You still have ample time to do it. Feel free and email me. I'd rather you not call me because I'm really fucking pissed at you. But feel free to email me and let me know where I'm wrong in any of this. And I'll be happy to go on YouTube and tell people what you meant or what you still mean, with your plan B. Wainwright and Baird pumping a bit this morning, shark circling. The whole ecosystem of Wall Street is terrible. All these sell side guys, the reason why they follow the company is they get paid on stock deals. So they want him to do a gigantic dilutive offering. There's millions in it for them. So, I wouldn't pay too much attention to what any sell side firm tells you. I've never spoken to a sell-sider on Ocular, and I don't speak to sell-siders at all. I'm not an institution. I'm just a large individual investor. I used to have a hedge fund when I was much younger. I used to work on Wall Street. I used to work at Goldman Sachs, which was Spear Leads. I worked at a hedge fund. I ran a hedge fund. I know what I'm doing. I don't know a fucking thing about biotech, but I definitely know a lot about the stock market. Sorry about the disrespect from OCUL management. If they end up diluting heavily in the weeks to come, what will you do with your position? Oh, I'll almost certainly sell the whole position out. I'm not holding this for years to come for TKI readout. And if they do dilute and go it alone, and if the dilution is more than 15% of the shares outstanding, I should say, you either can't trust them or partners did not see what we see. And if the entire world had the right to partner this and they all turned it down, then we're clearly dealing with a different kind of risk asset than I thought we were dealing with. So I would have to see a really interesting go it alone strategy for me to stick around. And I'm still optimistic they'll partner. I'm hopeful that all of this is him trying to get leverage with partners. But he could have that leverage with partners and still say he has a plan B to minimally or non-dilute. I just don't know if he has it. He hasn't articulated how he gets to $200 or $250 million with that plan. Why would they sit on the data? It's just a great question. I have no idea. Please, somebody explain to me how they would have only had the data for a month. You know, I don't know. It's a great question. I don't have an answer for you. You know, just to show you, by the way, that they had the data for as long as they've had it for, when they reported the 10-month data, the data cutoff was like the second week of December. That was the data cutoff. That doesn't mean that was when the 10-month time frame happened. That's just when they did it from a safety perspective. Okay. So if you just want to add 2 months from that, that gets you to like the second week of February. So, again, I know you just do the math from when they were presented it in September. Seems pretty obvious he's about to do a dilutive deal. Why do you keep the calls? See, I don't know if it's obvious he's about to do a dilutive deal. Okay. I spent all day yesterday trying to figure this out. And I spoke to people. I was very stressed out. It was one of the most stressful days I've ever had in this business because it's such a big position. And I do believe that they're still talking to partners and that it is an active data room, and all that's true. I do believe he wants leverage against partners, and anything he says is good for leverage. He's not going to tell us that he has term sheets he likes, but he's hoping to get better ones, right? Quite frankly, what I'm most disappointed about here is that he should be saying nothing. He shouldn't be hyping it at fireside chats. He shouldn't be hyping it on conference calls. He should be saying, we are running a process right now. We would love to share more, but until we reach a conclusion, unfortunately, we can't share any more information. And that's it. That's what he should be saying. All of the hype about the number of people there, very near term, everyone believes we have proof of concept. These things are all great if you pull a deal together. If you don't pull a deal together and you end up just doing a giant secondary with a bunch of large, biotech hedge funds, it hurts. It hurts all your current shareholders, and it would make you appear like you either didn't have a pulse on what everybody thought, and maybe you don't have a pulse on what, your viable plan is to get this drug to market. Now, again, this is not over. He can still come through. They can still sign a large partnership. And I won't be apologetic because I haven't called him out on anything except what I've called him out on, which is the way he treated me the last 3 days and making a huge mistake by not putting that information in the conference call yesterday. Even if they partner, he still made the mistake by not reiterating the plan B. So no, I won't apologize. I'll be very happy that he executed. But these are unforced errors, unless he really is planning a plan B that's very dilutive. But, time will tell if that's the case. Strange. Not even a leaked Bloomberg type article about pending partnership helping to pump the stock for dilution really either way. I thought about that, Jonathan. This is a very small company. Okay, those kind of articles don't really happen with $500 million market cap companies. It's interesting you said that. I also thought maybe we'd get a leak article about people that are circling. You don't really want to do that. You don't want to put the names of partners that are interested. You don't want to talk about, a deal's close because a deal might not be close. That's a pretty tough road to go down, even if things are going well. It's just too small of a company. It's not a buyout. The odds of that are extraordinarily low. So, but yeah, as I told Anthony for the last 6 months, you want a strong stock price. The stronger your stock price, the better you are in both outcomes. If outcome one is a partnership, you want your market cap as high as possible so you can show the partner that this drug has a high NPV. Look what the market's saying. And when we sell you stock in the partnership, we're going to sell it to you at a premium to where it's trading at. And if you do option B, which is minimally dilutive, which is probably also option A, you want a strong stock price so that whatever you sell your stock at in a secondary is at a less discount to it fucking in a death spiral, right? This stock was $7.90 yesterday, okay? I firmly believe the stock would be over $8 right now if that conference call was handled correctly. Now, we don't know what's happening. We don't know whether or not there really is a reason to panic. And that's the reason why things were omitted. But if there weren't, you'd have an $8 stock right now, not a $6.35 stock right now. And judging by the number of people that were CC'd on my email, there's a lot of brain power, and they're not thinking about the things they should be thinking about. That call yesterday is not the same thing as going to a scientific conference. Okay, you're talking to investors, and investors are all on pins and needles over one thing, over how they're going to get the capital to fund these trials. Okay, you could talk about 12-month data till you're blue in the face and promote it, but that is not what that call was about, even though they think it was. Whew. All right, I think I'm done. I'm very happy with how this went. I thank you guys very much for all being on it. I think I was fair and transparent. And, I encourage you to email the company. Be polite. You could tell them what you think about the way they treated me if you want. And you could tell them that my concerns are very valid. And you let them know what you think would happen if they did a large dilutive deal. Make no mistake about it. They'll have to raise $200 million. And if he backtracks on not being fully funded till NDA, if they only raise $75 or $100 million, shit, that doesn't even fund them through the end of 2024. So, they need a clear and concise message. They've had one for 6 months. Don't start wavering now because, you're getting close to D-Day. And if you are going to waver, be transparent with us. Don't just omit words. Explain what other possibilities might be. And if one of your possibilities is potentially going it alone and diluting the living shit out of us, well, you need to think about that and how you want to do that. I mentioned to Anthony back in February that a biotech CEO would be a hero if instead of doing these huge dilutive deals, they did a rights offering. And I think that would be terrible here. But they want to take care of the little guy and they really want to fund this trial and they want to keep all the economics. You get your two biggest shareholders who own 30% of the company. They backstop a rights offering. You price the rights offering at $3. Everybody can participate. That's how rights offerings work. You raise $150 million at $3. That's not dilution because every shareholder has the right to put up money to fund that round. And when you're done, you put up more money, but you still own the same percentage of the company. Okay? It's the honest way to do it. It takes a few weeks, but if you have a backstop, you pay bankers no money. You pay the backstop a little bit of money for doing it. And it's a fair and honest way to do it. Again, that would be a disaster to me in this outcome because it means you couldn't partner and you couldn't do it in a minimally or non-dilutive way. I mean, yes, you're going to triple the share count, but at least it would be done in a fair and honest way. So please email them and Twitter at me what they say if they reply. I'd love to hear it. And if you work for the company and you're listening to me right now, you guys all know my email address because I'm apparently very important over there. Big broadcaster. All right. I'm just super fucking pissed off. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Take care.